I think in terms of how I feel about it now, it was just incredibly comforting to know that if that's what it's like to die, then no big deal. No big deal. I'll be down for that when the time comes.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Hermida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools to support your journey as a coach and as a human being. Today's guest is Tim O. Davis. Tim is a spiritual coach and meditation teacher who lived for over 30 years in the temple of the universe, learning under Michael Singer. If you're unfamiliar, Michael is the author of The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment, two books that have played a pivotal role in my own development, two books that I highly recommend. So I was really excited to speak with Tim around some of these things. And as added context, Michael Singer founded the temple 50 years ago. So Tim lived there, more than half of that time. And if you read The Surrender Experiment, you'll know that it essentially is a place where the entire story unfolds. Anyway, Tim is an incredible teacher in his own right who supports individuals to integrate the teachings of this work. And this conversation was so insightful and filled with so much wisdom. I mean, I know you're going to hear it in his voice, but he very much does convey someone who has been deeply immersed in this deep work for a very long time, which he has. We talk about the bridge between manifestation and surrender, how to live within community, how to make spirituality practical, and many other things. I'm excited for you to meet Tim. Enjoy. Tim, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And one of the places that I wanted to begin was I was listening to a podcast interview that you had where you mentioned a near-death experience that you had at 10 years old. Can you share a little bit more about that experience and how that began to shift your life?
Yeah. So I grew up in Vermont, and I'm 65. So back then that would have been about 1970. So just to kind of frame the experience, I was not an urban child. I was very rural. And, this is back when there was like 2 channels, 3 channels on TV, and there wasn't the internet and there wasn't broad knowledge, shared with experiences like this. So I had no idea that this was even a thing, back, especially when I was, 10 years old. And I had a small surgery, like I had a tumor, a benign tumor right on my chest. So they were going to take it out just so I wouldn't grow like a mass there. And what I remember is being on this gurney and they're wheeling me in. And as they are getting to the operating room, they put this mask over me and they say, count backwards from 100, then you'll be gone. And so I got to like 98 and I was like that. And what I remember is just the awareness of my being rising out of my body, like just my consciousness rising up out of the body. And I'm looking down at me, my physical form, on an operating table. And there were nurses and doctor, like kind of leaning over me. And I just remember looking and then just kind of escaping, I guess you could say. It almost felt like I was escaping. And I was like going out and I found this corner of the wall and I go up the corner of the wall and got to the ceiling. Then I went left and hit, at the corner and went down sort of the edge of the ceiling and the wall. And next thing I know, I'm going out in that tunnel of light that people talk about. And so I'm just like in this tunnel of light and it's just my consciousness, not my physical form, but just, my being. And it was amazing. It was just like, I just remember feeling so relaxed and at peace. Like it wasn't a scary thing. There was like no mystery. It was mysterious, but there was no sense of unresolved fear or anything. It was just, this is an experience that we're having. And it was beautiful. And I go down this tunnel of light and there was a Christ figure at the end of it. I didn't see a face and I didn't, I don't know what Christ looked like per se, but when I got there, he was sort of, this being was standing there with their arms extended, almost like just sort of a hug maybe. And I just tried to go through. I tried to go past, and I was told, and not in any words or verbiage, but just this sense of, awareness coming through. It wasn't time yet, and I had to go back, and I just sort of remember this sort of feeling of turning around and not going straight back, but almost like a left-hand turn, just going left and back. And then my awareness returned as a 10-year-old boy in his body.
Yeah. Speaking of a 10-year-old boy in his body, I mean, you're speaking of this as 65-year-old Tim. How was 10-year-old Tim making sense of this once you came back into your body?
You know, it's one of those things. There's I can't remember what it's called, but there's this thing that happens to people when they go through or see something that just doesn't make sense or that's completely outside of their understanding, where like you just kind of just let it sit there. Like you almost just don't examine it too much. You just say, well, that happened and keep moving. And I don't remember telling a lot of people. Like I'm not even sure what I would have said and to whom I would have said it, right? I didn't, we weren't from a religious or spiritual family. There was none of that. Like we, go to church a little bit, but that was about it. So I don't remember even trying to make sense of it. But a few years later, I think I was like 14, and I was in the school library, and somehow like we must have had like, not that many books. It was very small, the school that I went to was a public school for 3 towns, and there were less than 200 kids in the school, and it was grades 7 through 12. So it was like a small place. And I found Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And that's really when I think it started to click in a little bit. Jonathan, was just this feeling of wow, that there's a spiritual journey thing that can happen to people. And then perhaps it started to kind of fill in as like something that may have happened in that sort of mystical realm of energy. I don't know. I'm not sure that I really ever made sense of it. I think in terms of how I feel about it now, it was just incredibly comforting to know that if that's what it's like to die, then no big deal. No big deal. I'll be down for that when the time comes.
Yeah, totally. So then how was that experience living within you over the years? Because it obviously impacted you. So was it something that was just there that every now and again you would remember, or was it somehow a
It,
big part of you?
it's a really good question. So I didn't immediately become a spiritual seeker per se. I was just a 14-year-old kid. I was just trying to like find a girlfriend or play soccer or do whatever I was doing. Right. But years later, when I was, I think, 30, and I found the Temple of the Universe, and we started hearing Michael Singer's teachings. One of the things that a lot of the temple folks did was read Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of Yoga. I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with that. That's the book that Steve Jobs handed out at his own funeral. That's how he held that. Amazing thought. But in that book, and in a lot of the other spiritual books that I read, there were a lot of mystical experiences being shared, like seeing your guru outside, like in the spirit, or people being in multiple places at once. There's just a lot of, in the spiritual teachings, there's a lot of that kind of things are happening. And I guess what it did was it helped me to hear these stories of people's experiences with their gurus and mystical experiences and sort of out of body experiences, and not reject them. That's how I would put it. I was talking to somebody just a few minutes ago about how I think it's really healthy in this spiritual space to have a almost like an area over here where I believe everything I just heard. I believe this thing. And then over here, I don't believe that. That is not true. I deny that completely. But in the middle, there's this huge space of stuff that I don't think I really know enough to classify it either as I believe it or don't believe it.
Hmm.
This experience broadened that middle space of not really knowing, and also giving lots of space for how people interpret their own experiences. So I may have described it as going down a tunnel of light, and somebody else may put it another way. But that experience was real to them, so I can accept the reality of their experience without really having to worry if that was technically possible or not, or within the rules of physics as we knew them back in 1960 or 1970. Was that possible? I don't know. I don't care. There's been a consistency of interesting experiences that people have had, and I can put them in that sort of middle area until I have more information. That's what it really did, was open my eyes to kind of the middle ground of not knowing.
Mm. Which is such a place of discomfort for so many people.
I think that's maybe the good point, is it made it comfortable for me. Like, I don't have to know, right? I knew what I felt. I knew what the experience was for me. Can I say what the experience is for anybody else? No, but I certainly have a more receptive ear to other people's experiences now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the true spiritual journey, is living the not knowing and discovering from personal experience, moment to moment, what is present here and now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How to pay attention to that, and then how to process it in a healthy way, like have everything become for our growth,
Yes. Yes.
all these experiences.
Well, speaking of having everything for our growth, you mentioned in your bio that I've experienced deep emotional pain and know what it means to truly suffer, which is a strong line. What do you mean by that? And can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah. So I found the Temple of the Universe, Michael A. Singer's Temple of the Universe, back in 1991, I think it was. And my wife and I have lived here for 31 years, 33 years, excuse me. And in that time, like the whole purpose, catch that, one of the main exercises of living on a temple or an ashram or a spiritual community is to work with a lot of the underlying trauma, pain, samskaras that have accumulated over the course of life, right, or past lives, depending upon how you view the world. And in my 33, 34 years of doing this work, a lot of deep stuff has come up about love, being loved, being a legitimate like person who gets things done. I've had a lot of stuff about success, being successful. The dark night of the soul was a love situation, and my heart got broken, and just this sense of it was just an old sense being triggered by a new experience. And what it did was show me how much energy can be stored within this spiritual heart, the spiritual heart center. And I don't think without so this ashram, the Temple of the Universe that I keep talking about, is a spiritual community where we meditate every morning and every evening, and we've got programs every day. So there's like a morning and an evening with very consistent sadhana. And I didn't know that I could process so much pain. I think that's the point, right? Like all this pain came up that was almost more pain than the situation should have driven, if you know what I mean. It was like almost like this broke my heart open to
Yes.
experience pain that had been there who knows how long, right?
Yeah.
And I think the dark night of the soul was just working through that, like being willing to sit in that experience of discomfort and allow it to process, allow it to come up, to look at it, to feel it, and not try to think it away. So much of what our culture is definitely oriented around how much people think, like how smart you are, and how like you're able to think your way out of any problem, and you can outthink, like you want to be the smartest person at the table, just all that sort of heaviness around thinking and thought and your mind. And what this experience showed me, that the mind isn't the machine that will supply peace in my being. That's really what it came down to, because I kind of had to just like burn out all thinking. Have you heard of a Zen koan? You know what a Zen koan is?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for those of you, it's a question that the Zen master asked the student in order to break their brain. And the classic example is, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
Mhm.
And the purpose of that is to break your habit of thought as the cure to all of your
Mm.
discomfort, unease, pain. And this dark night of the soul had the same effect, because I could think about this and I could logic around this and I could make plans and I could do anything around this specific thing that happened, but I couldn't resolve it. I couldn't bring peace into my being. And so the net effect is learning how to work with the raw energy as opposed to the thoughts about the event that
Mm.
happened. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Can you feel that?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. That is the teaching. I think so often, I think there is a place for therapy in this world, talk therapy and even talk coaching and all that. But ultimately, if we're seeking true healing, it does have to happen at the level of the body and experience,
Yeah.
because that's where the energies are sort of intertwined and tangled.
Yeah.
And I shared I experienced something similar in my own journey, where when I first started exploring and sort of something cut me wide open, an experience cut me wide open, and I was sort of exposed to all that which was
Mhm.
inside of me, it really felt like it was so much more than what was just mine. It felt like I cut something open that was lifetimes, families, generations old.
Yeah.
And that is part of this journey as well, is that we're uncovering stuff that we're carrying unconsciously that is not just ours of this lifetimes, I feel. You know?
Yeah. Family trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. So it could feel worse before it gets better when you start this journey is the bigger point, right? Which was what
Well,
I'm hearing from you.
I think it's not that it feels worse as much it is that we make a choice to feel.
Mm,
Like, there's we it's easily easy to drink, smoke, do all kinds of other things, seek success, seek money, do all these other things to kind of distract us from this feeling that we're having.
yes.
And a lot of the work that we're doing is around awareness. That's why we meditate. That's why we, do practices, so that we become aware of the internal experience that we're having, so that we can work with it in a productive way. And I think that's really what it was just that sense of, I've been broken open by this, and now I have a chance to cleanse from this very deep wound that's coming up. And I teach meditation in prison. I volunteer in prison, and this idea of family trauma is just so profound. Like that, I see these people that I work with, incarcerated people that I work with, and they are releasing. When they go into meditation and they start to release, they're working through stuff that's just generations old, and the stories that they tell about like stuff that happened in front of them with their parents. And there's no doubt there's no curiosity around why they're incarcerated. They've just been given a terrible hand to start with.
Yeah. 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 Totally. Totally.
Get to unwind all that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then you had this experience of heartbreak that then sort of had you looking within. But it sounds like you overcame that heartbreak, had gotten married, and then at that point went to the temple. What was happening in your life that drew you to the work of Michael Singer in the temple at that time?
It was I honestly don't know per se, but this near death experience as a kid and reading Siddhartha and some other explorations, I just think I was predisposed. Like there was something inside me that was looking for this. And I had another difficult experience, another dark night of the soul, um, before I found the temple. And it was I flunked out of college in Vermont. I went to the University of Vermont, and after 3 semesters, I flunked out, and it was like it felt like a big deal for me. And girlfriend broke up with me, and it was like this whole like cascading series of events. So I went to a real like heavy duty Christian church to try to find some solace, and I was there for a couple of years, and it helped from the standpoint that it gave me some guardrails and introduced me to Christ and showed me a lot of deep, beautiful spiritual teachings. But in the end, I was a little pushed away from it. There's just some basic premises that were difficult for me to agree with, right? And so I just kind of put it down. I said, okay, well, I guess church isn't the thing for me. I didn't know there were other, I didn't know there was Buddhism and or other outlets or ways to, any other ways to find, a version of God other than, Christianity. So years later, when I went to the temple and I started hearing Michael A. Singer talk, it was like, I just been waiting my whole life to hear this. Like the way he talked about energies and the way he talked about like how we work through our karma, the way he talked about, just the rule, what karma was in general. And, the idea of Buddhist suffering and surrender and being, fearful, working from fear and working from attraction. Just all these ideas just hit at a more subtle level. And there was much less focus on sin and much less focus on just sort of being a bad person. That this all is about growth. It's all about learning and growth and evolving as opposed to being, punished. And that really appealed to me. And it opened the door towards, real love, like actually viewing this, whatever the God experience is, that it's one of love, that when you get down to it, it doesn't have to be like this heavy judgment, confession kind of a situation.
Yeah. And you had an experience of that immediately when you first encountered Mickey Singer, as I understand it, where he saw right through you in your own words and had this sort of unconditional acceptance of whatever he was seeing. Can you share more about that experience?
I We walked up to the temple for the first time. And of course, this is now back in 1991, I believe it was. So, there, if you've been to the temple recently, like it's much more developed. Like the roads are paved all the way out now. We got buildings. Well, didn't used to be like that. It was like just a building out in the middle of kind of nowhere. And I can remember like just finding my way out. Like, is this the right place? My wife and I were like going in and we walk up and I can remember just like he was standing on the porch. I think we were just walking in, not much, at the same time he was, and he just looked at us. And I just felt like this guy could see all the way through me. Like he could really like have an energetic understanding what was going on in there. And it scared me because I had a lot of shame. I just like, oh man, I felt like he could see all the parts. And the beauty of it was that I was able to relax around that and say, I don't, just because this feels like shame doesn't mean I have to have shame. That's old conditioning. And
Mm.
so it allowed me just to have him, to be more open around him and to feel like I can trust this guy. I can trust this experience.
Mm. How long were you in relationship with his work before you decided to move to the temple?
I think it was like 8, 9 months. We were invited to move in. We were, young and very energetic and we like to help. We like every time it was like, like a Thanksgiving thing or some project that the temple still does years later, we would sign up to help and bring food and we just made it our mission to really help the place and along with all the other beautiful people who've been volunteering there for 50 years and longer. Um, but yeah, it was just like once I heard it made sense, right? And I would have this sort of thought experiment in my mind, like if I could have done anything, like maybe like I could have been a good basketball player. So I think maybe I could have played in college somewhere, or maybe if I just devoted all my energy, my effort to being a great basketball player, maybe I could have done it, or a soccer player. And so as I did that thought experiment, what kept landing was, well, I guess what I would do is do whatever it was that would help all aspects of my life to help
Mm.
make me happier and smarter and just sort of raise my ability to deal with the things that happen in life. And at some point I realized that the temple was that. Like it's an all around performance enhancing practice, you know? And and it also gives room to experience like real brotherly love, or like real unconditional love. And once that started to happen on occasion, then I was like, oh, this is it. I'm here. I'm staying. It was
Yeah.
pretty quick. Like I really felt like that this is good stuff. Like it felt very trustworthy and beautiful right from the start.
Mm. Yeah, it almost feels like you made the decision to go pro in spirituality.
Well, what I will say is this: you know Malcolm Gladwell, right?
Yeah,
The 10,000 hour rule, and I
that's right.
think I'm like at 30,000 hours of
Yeah.
of temple work, just on its own. So it's like, yeah, that's what it feels like. Like that became the underlying interest of everything. So I still love sports and I love music and I love, all kinds of, current media but underlying it all is just this beautiful framework. that's been, true for thousands of years. It's basically, I feel like it's the same exercise that humans have been doing for thousands of years to stay happy and to stay at peace.
Yeah. Yeah. But both the Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment have played such a critical role in my own development and understanding, reality myself, my own journey. I often say that I feel like I've been living my own surrender experiment over the past 17 years of my own spiritual unfolding, where
Mm,
I really only feel like I've made one decision in my life, and that was to quit my corporate job and go off backpacking, and that sort of created a cascading series of experiences, opportunities up until today,
mm,
where I'm at today. So, in that sense, it's been an influential part of my life. A lot of people in my world, I recommend both books to a lot of
mm,
people. And it's interesting, especially with the surrender experiment, a lot of people feel drawn to that concept of surrender, and particularly in the way that Mickey speaks to it, because it's a very compelling story, right? It's not just, I surrendered and I went off into the woods and
never
became
heard from again.
I never heard from him again. He he started a company, a software company, and ended up selling it for 1 billion, basically, right?
Yeah, and in the '90s, the late
In
'90s,
the
late
90s.
'90s $1 billion, yeah.
Right, which is, 5, 10x, whatever it is, now. And so there's this sense of, "Oh, okay, great. I can do the surrender thing, because if I do the surrender thing, then I'll get some of that." I'll get this will lead to that. And it's not necessarily the case. And I wanna sort of talk about that in a moment, but before I do that, I find it interesting that you lived through that era a bit of him being the CEO of this company. What did you notice in him? What did you see? What can you speak to about him running this
Mm.
company as he was also a spiritual leader of this temple?
Well, I have to say, it really inspired me. One of the things that made me want to, additionally, in addition to the teachings, one of the things that really drove me to love the temple experience was the fact that Mickey was a successful businessman.
Mm,
I just felt like that's a huge part. And I'm not saying that you have to be, wealthy, but the ability to participate in society and do it from a place of love and providing care and support to the rest of the world, right? This was really important to me. Like, that's how I wanted to be. So he is a great example of that, because that's what he does. He's been completely successful in the world, and so to me, that's part of spirituality, is to know how to kind of manage your energies in the world. Now, it's not everybody gets to have that kind of success, and for me, success was much lower level. Like, I got to be a photographer right, a photojournalist, and I've done a number of things, and I would measure success in the amount of peace I had as I was doing that, as opposed to how much money I earned, and so that's what it was the ability to work in the world, do the things that the world has for you, serve, and actually do it with a sense of peace and focus and surrender, like you said. So that drew me a lot to him. That made me trust, like, this was the right way to kind of experience spirituality, because there wasn't just a leaving of the world. There wasn't just as you say, like, just going into hiding and never being heard from again. Like, I'd like to be out there making a positive contribution. And I think that's an important part of, carrying, charitable and loving feelings and emotions forward, is to provide service.
yeah. What would you say most people misunderstand about the practice of surrender?
That it's an aspect of weakness, right? I So for me, when I think about surrender, I feel that there is something happening that seems to be guiding us. Now, it's hard for me to say that's a God thing. I don't know if it's quantum physics, it's,
Yeah.
consciousness underlying the quantum field. I lots of interesting feelings about that. God has been taught with multiple names across thousands of years. And so who knows who's right? I don't know. But what I do feel is the universe does create a path in front of us if we are receptive to it. And surrender to me is the ability to allow life to be life and to function well within whatever is real in that moment. And the Stoics, really, I think they focused on that really well back in the day when they talked about just Amor fati, you know that concept?
I'm not sure of that concept. No.
Okay, so amor is Latin for love, and fati is fate. Essentially, I'm probably killing that, but essentially what they said was love your fate, love what's happening to you,
Mm,
because when you love what's happening to you, aside from it being good, bad, whatever it is, just be in love with the life that you're giving. Now you can engage with it from a state of enthusiasm and fullness instead of resistance. I see surrender being that same lesson, that life is going to do what life does. And it's up to us to accept that and try to make the most of it. But we can't just reject what's happening.
yeah. How
So
do you,
for example, if I could,
please?
there's a lot of polarity around political thinking these days. You may have noticed that that it's like it's hard to have a conversation with somebody because you may or may not agree with them, and it's just going to turn into a fight. So there's we have an interesting political thing happening, and it's you can the point of surrender is to accept that this is what it is right now. Like this is what it is. These are the rules. This is the chaos that we seem to have right now. As somebody who's going to get on a flight tomorrow, and you know I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to because if I'm going to get on this plane, right? That there's a certain amount of chaos in the world. So accepting that, just being like that's what it is. I may have to come back. I may not make my flight. I may not do this. Now I'm going to in that space not surrender in terms of trying to get to Austin, Texas, but I'm going to do everything I can to get there. But it means that I have to accept the reality. These are the conditions that we're under.
Mm,
And that seems simple and it seems trite, but that acceptance of your specific conditions on a moment by moment basis is
yeah.
really, really powerful.
Yes. Yes. To not be in resistance to what is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's easy for us to be in traffic. I think Mickey uses this example, but just to be stuck in traffic or stuck at a job that feels difficult or whatever, and to reject it or resist it. And at some point, acceptance means this is where I am, and accepting it fully means that you can then kind of find the clarity and the the right force and the right energy and the right reason to leave and to do whatever comes next from a good place instead of a place of resistance or wanting to burn the place down, just to, for lack of make it a simpler concept.
Yeah. When you and I spoke on Friday, I think it was, you had mentioned the law of attraction and that being something that you do believe in, and that it is something that a sort of a force that maybe you work with. How do you make sense or bridge, the concept of surrender with, the law of attraction? Because there's a bit of a yearning and desire for something to be here that isn't here, right? On that side. And then on the surrender side is the acceptance totally of what is here now.
Yeah. So for me personally, the law of attraction starts with awareness. And we spend a lot of time working on awareness, meditation, etc., just learning to be able to be present with our own functioning, our own heart space, our own mind space. When we start to pay attention to the way our mind creates ideas and the way we talk to ourselves, to me, that's the beginning of manifestation, right? So I in my work of just meditating and really becoming mindfully aware of what is going on in here thought wise, I started to see a lot of really self destructive thinking. Like I would call myself terrible names and I'd be really mad at myself. If I made a mistake at work, I would tear myself down and really unkind to call myself a jerk or an asshole or a dumb fuck, whatever that was, right? Just like, I would just like, and I still catch it coming from if I make a mistake or something,
Yeah.
those thoughts come through. So catching them and just sort of holding them and not letting them, not resisting them, but not just seeing thoughts as what they are. They're just a thing. They're just a thing but it's not who I am. It's not my identity. It's not. So releasing that creates positive manifestation just by cleaning out the negative manifestation. Because every time that you allow yourself to think poorly about yourself or to make negativity of situations, you're creating a negative manifestation. So to me, the highest form of manifestation is to surrender and just let it be what it is without a human idea of this is bad, this is good, this is acceptable, this is unacceptable. It just is. It just is. That's what it is. I am who I am. I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to give myself a lot of space to make those mistakes, and I'm going to love myself for trying. And then that creates an open environment for facilitating beauty instead of pain and suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, which is at the core of the teaching of the surrender experiment, that once we let go of those things, life unfolds in really magical, beautiful ways. And
Yeah.
we can be with whatever is unfolding, whether our mind considers it good or bad. I guess the point where I'm most curious about is that aspect of will and desire. So in that's sort of implied in law of attraction, like there's something that I want out there, and
Mhm.
you kind of are yearning or trying to bring it in a sense. How do you work with that? Is that how you see the law of attraction, or do you see it differently?
I think that's like in terms of my own evolution, that's right exactly where I am is learning how to discern what the path forward is.
Yeah.
It's it's like when you made the choice to quit your corporate job and go hiking, like you had a moment of clarity and where everything just sort of fit and made sense,
Mm,
right? And that fueled a choice. And that's a really like having that kind of clarity is a beautiful thing.
mm,
And that's right where I am. Like I'm it on one hand, it's fun to make imaginations and I'll call them fantasies, but just to imagine like great outcomes. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be da, 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 da. And people are doing that all over the place. You can, it's not a problem to find people who want to teach you how to do that, you know? But what I want to know is, do you actually end up with more peace?
right.
Are you actually happier? Because we're famous for wanting things on one point in our life and then not wanting them later. It's so interesting to see how like the way that we are living right now, the choice, like whoever's listening, you're living in a certain set of circumstances of a life that you have largely created, adapting to the current conditions, et cetera. But the life you're living is an answer to a previous problem.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
you have manifested this life you have, and we just keep thinking, well, this is close, but just not quite good enough, and just to keep like, if I can only get this much. So that's what I see as the problem is the sense that like manifestation is about we're trying to be happy. The answer to the problem of humanity is to be at peace,
Yeah.
to enjoy, have unconditional love. And as long as your exercises and manifestation are really helping that to happen, then I'm down, do it. But what I see most of the time is people just want stuff or money or the things that they think will provide happiness instead of happiness itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I couldn't be more satisfied and happy with the life that I currently have. I mean, I feel blessed beyond belief. And if I were to have given the decision-making powers to my mind, the decisions I would have made would have been completely different. And so it goes to show when you're really present with that, I don't know anything about what's in my best interest. And so it makes it easier then to cede the power away from that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in this work that we do here at the center with the deep coaching, we talk a lot about sensing into the emergence of what wants to happen. And so
Yeah.
there's a co-creation with life where we get really quiet and we're really sensing, which I see in your life and the way it's unfolding, because you were living at the temple for 30 plus years and you began to sense this emergence of something new, of going beyond the temple and creating something of your own, building off the teachings,
Yeah.
spreading the word in different ways, sharing your impact in the world. And it feels like you're stepping into that which you have been sensing.
Mm.
Right. And so you're living that manifestation, but it's like this co-created dream that you and life are um, creating.
Dance with.
Yeah, dancing with. Yeah,
Yeah. When it's at its best, it's like you're dancing. You don't know who's leading.
that's right.
It's not my choice. It's not my desire that's leading me, but here I am, and these things keep happening, and it's beautiful. Um, but I have to keep like my awareness because like I've seen in my, my own being, I do have still lots of desires, like nice cars and whatever. Like I like cars, and so
Yeah.
there are things that I could be distracted by that would pull me out of balance, I guess is the way I look at it. So I agree, like that my work is to stay focused on the deepest parts of myself and just let it come and answer fully. And there's another aspect too, which is like there's an element of challenge around all this, right? I'm 65. I could be retiring. I could be just slipping away and just like. But again, I don't want to go out like that. I want to face this choice that you're talking about to not go beyond the temple, but maybe branch it out a little bit or take some of the experiences that I've had and love and what's been given to me in the 30 some odd years and take it and share it. But I, it's like I can't count on helping anybody because that's not my choice. That's not my outcome. I just do what I do my dharma, do my responsibility, share the lesson, share whatever I can, and then let the universe take care of all that. So there's a way to do it really cleanly, I guess is what I'm saying, where it isn't about me.
Yeah.
It isn't about my ego. And it isn't about what I want to happen to me. But at the same time, I have a responsibility to support myself and to, be able to pay my bills and pay my taxes and do all the things. So there's a real balance there and what I'm going to say out of complete honesty, Jonathan, is that that's right where I'm learning how to walk. Like I see some people even able to handle this part of it really easily. And some people handle it, it's a rough thing. Like they're always just kind of wanting something. So I think there's a real balance there that I'm right on the edge of kind of working through.
Yeah, it's so beautiful because we're always presented with that which we're needing to move through, and that is an edge. I feel that we do carry this mind that is sort of designed to keep us safe, and so
Yeah.
and part of safety isn't just physical safety; it's also sort of societal, um, uh,
Emotional.
emotional. We have these ideas of who we want to be, who we should be, and that's part of the ego that we talk about. That
Yeah.
personal sense of self, and we don't want to fully discount it because there is a sort of there's something about it that we want to be in relationship with, I think.
Yeah.
And Mickey speaks about it really beautifully, and it's sort of the difference between having preferences and desires.
Hmm.
We all the personality that is going to has preferences. I prefer this car versus that car. I prefer to have money than to not have money. I think
Yeah.
it's when the grip of desire, yearning, and these are all subtle terms. We can kind of dissect them and be really nuanced about it, because yearning is going to be there, desire is going to be there. But what is our relationship with that yearning and that desire? Is
Yeah.
our attachment to it, I guess, is the thing. The attachment, as the Buddha says, is that which creates the suffering. And the more attached we are to these outcomes, the more we tend to suffer and create negative ripples, one can say.
Yeah. I love that. In my own life, when I was working as a photo editor at the Gainesville Sun, there would be times when I had to make judgment calls, right? And part of me just wanted to be right for my ego's sake, but I also had the dharma of making a good choice,
Yeah.
right? And so doing my best to put all of my skill and ability and my training into effect in even a very worldly way to make the best possible outcome from the use of this person's time or whatever, right? And so it became like I had to really be aware of my own personal ego investment versus like what I was doing dharmically to create what needed to happen. And I think that's the fun part of this is it's never like completely one way or another. And the exercise of awareness is all about becoming more and more familiar with your ways of getting things done and knowing how your internal clock works and your internal discussion goes and being at peace with all that so that you can work towards the best possible solution, even though the ego still will be involved a little bit.
Yeah. And that is the price of entry, I think, to living in this world. We spoke about going off into the woods or into the mountains and just becoming one with life. One can make that choice.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be confronted with the things that we're confronted with when we decide to engage with life, be in the world, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes this beautiful. This is also what makes this work relatable. Everybody listening to this, I know for certain, is wanting to be in this world, but also have the right relationship with it, where
Yeah.
we feel that sense of freedom and
Yeah.
connection and love. consistently. And so I think that's where we're all trying, everyone listening here, I would say in this room, we're trying to get to, right? That place of alignment with life and ourselves.
I think that's actually like why religions evolved in the first place, to go back to like first man, like the first like
That's true.
self-aware human. That's essentially the problem that all these religions have been trying to solve the whole time. And I think that's also the beauty of it, and which takes us back to the Untethered Soul, is that there is a tremendous consistency amongst like religions when you get past sort of the weird stuff on the extremes, right, and get down to like the core teachings of whatever the source was for these teachings.
Yeah.
It's pretty consistent. Know yourself, be okay with yourself, let go of your internal struggle as much as you can, and try to try to approach the world with love. So I love that you brought that up, because like really we're just in this long continuum of people all having a very similar experience, just with different varieties and flavors and tastes, you know?
Building off of that, speaking of people with variety of tastes and flavors, what was it like to live in community for 30 years with so many different types of people that I imagine came through the temple?
It's really interesting. It's so funny. This morning, I went to the temple and meditated, and afterwards, I met a young woman from Vermont, where I'm from, and she lives in a Buddhist monastery in the Northeast Kingdom, which is a cool thing. And she was talking about how intense it was, and how like within the core group, they're just always sort of having to work stuff out, bumping into each other, and sort of they are their own growth mechanism. And
Yes.
that's what I would say it was for me at the temple too. Like, you go every morning, you go every evening. There's a remarkable consistency to all that, so that you are working with your deepest stuff instead of always new things coming in, like new preferences, new people, new this. There's a sense that like with this consistency of life, you're dealing with your deep stuff instead of the flavor of the day. And when it's the same people and the same projects, and you're singing the same songs, and maybe one person claps ahead of the beat and the other person, like, all it's amazing, like the stuff that you can find coming up in your mind during these situations. So
Yeah.
what is it like? It's like being in a family where you enthusiastically accept that whatever discomfort you're feeling is your own,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
instead of blaming it on them, or telling you like, if you would change, I could be happy. And if you would do this, then that would make everything better. Like, no, it's like this operating assumption that it's up to you to be okay, and that we'll figure it out together. And I think that's what it is. Just, a definition of monastic, this was a semi monastery, if you will. Like, we would get together every morning, evening, but then we'd go off and work, and like work at real jobs. And Mickey was, building a company, and my wife worked for the company, and I was working for a few different places. But there's this sense that the fable is that when you join a monastery, you're like rocks being dropped into a pouch, and with enough time and energy, like, and the rocks bouncing off each other, they will all become smooth and perfectly round. Like there's a sense of just chipping away all of the dross of your being that doesn't need to be there, the ego and the difficulty and the preferences. Just they monastic life tends to erode all that, just from the sameness, just from the consistency of experience day to
Mm.
day.
Yeah. I feel like we're in an interesting time evolutionarily, because I think two things are happening simultaneously. Have been. Obviously, we're connected to more people than any human has ever been connected to. And so we have that access. And at the same time, I think there is a deglobalization happening, meaning I think there's a localization happening. I think people are going to be driven more to tighter communities because it's
Yeah.
been such an expansive big world, and we don't necessarily, I don't know, maybe believe the same things, want to live the same
Yeah.
way, and all those things. So I do feel that the next stage of evolution is, yeah, we have access to all these humans out in the world through technology, but at the same time, we're going to be living day to day in tighter communities. I think we've seen this also with cities in Miami.
Mm, mm,
Neighborhoods become more sort of all inclusive, where you can
mm.
find anything you need in that neighborhood and you don't have to venture off too far. So
Yeah.
that's a bit of the localization that I think is happening. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And related to that, what the challenges of being in tighter community might be, given that some are going to be conscious, some are going to be less conscious. there's going to be a blend of that, I think, in the world.
I, what I'm going to say is the problem is never the other people. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
I, I, I I think that's the most powerful aspect of what I walk away, like as I've stepped away from, going as much as I used to, the thing that I see is it's still me. It's still me that I'm working on. Like,
Yeah.
and because I've pulled myself to some degree out of that environment, I still take myself, right? So it's still this thing that's driving my experience of life. And
Yeah.
so that's that part. And in terms of that local, I'm not sure how this is going to go. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who want to, like, Miami's a beautiful place. I love Miami, but there's the Midwest and there's Mississippi and there's Ohio and they're like, if you're a yogi or you have a Buddhist belief system, it's really difficult to find community in those places.
Yeah.
And so you'll seek it however you can. And so I think that's what I see happening is that we are going to be finding our tribe, as you say, more closely, but we may have to travel for the in-person part. And I think that's the real challenge is that sense of humanity. Like, cause you can go to Chat GPT and get a great discussion about your samskaras and this and that and how to like work with your internal family systems and the blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, you want to feel this human vibration of love and you want to hug and you want to feel like this person really understands and cares how this rolls through and
Yeah.
doesn't agree with me all the time. Like, for example, right? So I think we are seeking our own world to a fault. Like we aren't open to other political beliefs and spiritual beliefs. But I think we're just all essentially doing the best we can. I mean, there's just so much information to process. I think
Yeah.
the challenge really though is to create systems where we can have human contact with people who deeply support us for the right reasons.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and that's my bigger point. I think folks are going to be seeking that out more, and whether it means travel or actually decide to move a place
Yeah.
where folks that you are more in vibe with, one can say, I think people are going to be seeking that out more, rather than be isolated and only sort of seek it out virtually, which is great. That's a huge.
Yeah.
We are a virtual organization, in that regard, we have folks from all over the world, but at the same time, that in person, we can't replace the in person connection, the
No.
hugs, the eye contact. That is a very special part of this process.
Yeah, so true, so true. It's been interesting to watch how the temple has evolved. Um, you know, prior to COVID, when Mickey talked, we would record them on CDs. And before that, cassette tapes. I was part of that process. And then when COVID hit, we started to record them as MP3s, and they began to be distributed, online. And that has brought tons of people into the area. Many of and a lot of them have stayed, have bought property in this neighborhood, in the neighborhood surrounding the temple. So that evolution that you're talking about is really happening, that people are picking their home based on not just the climate or their job or whatever, but you can really pick your home based on the pool of people that are going to surround you and what their ethics are and what their ethos is and how they see the world.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally. What we can't know, and I think you were alluding to this, that we can't know how this is all going to unfold. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of complexity. But what I think I'm confident about, and that you're confident about, is that folks are going to be seeking out this kind of work, the work that you do, the work that we do, the work to better understand oneself, the work of better working with that which is within us and
Yeah.
that which is emerging through us. And so again, people are going to be seeking out. So what are you most, I guess, how are you positioning yourself out in the world? What is that? What is that message that is yours that you're looking to spread more of?
It's really about how that to become aware. I think is the simplest way I can put it is to pay attention to what's going on inside, because without that understanding of self, without that self-knowledge, you're just going to be dragged around by stray energies and whims and ego, right? So what I try to help with is to help people be willing to turn inward and watch what's going on inside, watch the process of their mind, when we have difficult situations, we have anxiety or fear, doubt, or depression, there's a real distinct pattern of how our mind is working in those situations. And as we go through enough times of watching that, we can really help the release of the underlying problem that's at the root of that. And that all these external things ostensibly provide happiness, like the nicer car, like all the stuff I was talking about. But at the end of the day, happiness is a deeply internal experience. And by doing this work with the mind, understanding the self, that can evolve into going to the source of happiness, which is your own consciousness, your own heart, your own connection point with the energy that is the rest of the universe and God, by whatever name or idea or concept you wrap around those three letters.
Hmm. What
That's
is,
that's my work.
yeah. What is your definition of happiness?
Peace. I have been through enough difficult situations to know that as I go through them, it's an amazing opportunity to learn and grow. So on one hand, there is difficulty, but there doesn't have to be suffering.
Hmm.
There is the processing of difficult situations, difficult energies, difficult, people, but it doesn't have to take away my sense of peace.
Yeah.
So peace is almost like the floor, the foundation of this experience. But the other part is like when I walk out of the gym and it's a beautiful sunny day and I just stop for a minute and before I get in my car and I look up at the sun and I just feel the weather and feel the sun. I just take a deep breath and just realize that it's a magical fucking experience to be alive and just to feel like this beautiful nature park that source has provided us on earth and to be grateful for that.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm trying to do. Just like to take away through awareness, allow distractions to be replaced by conscious awareness of peace.
Hmm. And that's the biggest hurdle for the human mind in most people. The thoughts are so compelling, the story is so compelling, to be drawn in it, entangled in it. It's the thing that folks are most drawn to. So it's that, and I think that's where spiritual experience becomes so important for people to begin tasting what it's
Yeah.
like to not always be in the mind, to
Yeah.
have that separation, to have that deeper connection, because then that becomes at least something you can work towards.
Yeah. I heard an interesting theory that that our mind activity is a result of sort of Darwinistic thinking, right? Like we've evolved to be taller and stronger and faster. That people who survived had really active, super on point minds that were
Okay.
just trying to process every threat, and now we live in an era where that's not necessary. Like in a way, you could look at like obesity, like we've been trained through Darwinism to just eat. Like whenever there's food, you better eat it because we don't know how long it's going to be. And of course, now our society, there's McDonald's on every corner, so that's not the problem anymore.
Yeah.
The problem anymore isn't safety, it's ego now. Like our ego gets threatened and the mind is constantly spinning to try to protect the ego.
Mm.
And to appreciate that that's not necessary and to catch it and just relieve yourself of the mental burden of protecting that is so powerful. Like it's a huge step towards peace,
That's
right?
it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Step one is the awareness. So learning to become aware of that which is inside of us. And then the next most important step to really untangling it is the discernment.
Yeah.
Discerning. Discerning what is of me, what is in, what relationship do I want to have with this, and begin letting go. That's where the surrender happens, in that discernment, I believe.
You know, when we're doing things that we're good at, we are in a state of high consciousness. We have consciousness. Like if we're dumb example, we're throwing a baseball. We're just throwing a baseball. And we have very conscious awareness of what it feels like when the ball hits the glove and what it's like when we throw it and what it feels like. And through like, it's amazing that people can throw a ball or a basketball and hit like a very tiny target under great duress,
Sure.
So as consciousness builds around a certain behavior or activity, we get deeper and deeper wisdom, and it gets quieter around that. That's really what we're looking at, is to fill in those spaces where there's no like awareness is the first step, but as we sit through it and stay more calm, stay in peace, like breathe in a way that tells our body everything's okay. Consciousness, just this deeper awareness comes around everything that's happening to us because we're not being threatened. We feel safe in that environment. We can just allow ourselves to be in situations that used to threaten us. And as that happens, then our sense of consciousness and awareness just grows and grows and grows and grows exponentially. And then we can be eventually at peace in almost all circumstances. We can. One thing I talk about in prison is that our mission, when I volunteer in prison and I teach meditation, I talk about how, there are going to be times when you need to fight to protect yourself. That's the nature of being incarcerated, that there's physical altercations. But awareness and consciousness helps you to make the best choices around how you engage, so that you're not engaging from an ego aspect to try to beat the crap out of somebody because they didn't respect you. It's about creating the quickest path to resolution in any situation. That's really the way I see peace, is that when you're operating from peace, you're creating the circumstances of coming back to peace.
Yes.
When you get distracted, like peace becomes a habit. Peace becomes the direction that you're always headed in. And that we see distractions for what they are, just momentary things that came from outside. And we can allow them to take our knowledge of peace away for a moment, but not for long. That we're always kind of reverting back to allowing gravity to bring us back to the deepest source of peace, which is inside us, our consciousness, our will, the self, capital S, self.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Is there a particular inmate that stands out as someone that has really taken hold to this work and you can see the fruits of it in their being?
One, so I work primarily out of a dorm at Lancaster Correctional Institute that's built around spiritual work. Like, to get into this dorm, you have to be sort of at a level of trying to, make something of yourself. And one story I will tell is, and I'm going to not say any names or try to do anything to identify this person, but they had a lot of childhood trauma. They had a lot of things happen to them, in their upbringing that made them easily distracted in certain directions. I'll just say that. Okay. And as we started working through meditation and this person started sharing with me like these memories and working through them, they really got to a point where they could see with full awareness the distractive quality of what was coming up inside them. And so eventually they were released, and they had to jump through a lot of hoops in order to, get out into the world, find a job, do all the things. And in moments when they were at most at risk, when like there were moments when they had to like call their probation officer, do something like that, and they couldn't get to a phone or whatever, this person would just be under incredible stress because it could really threaten his ability to get back to his family and see, what was going on with it, visit his home. And he would just start to turn inward in those moments. He was able to see stress and the distraction of stress and realize that the enemy wasn't the thing that was happening. The enemy was his response, an ill conceived response to stress. And so when he became really like super aware and able to release as he was in the middle of difficult situations, and he just started making better and better decisions, and he's doing great. He's got a job, and he's been at it for years now, and that's the example. And forgive me for not like saying more about him, but
it's okay.
And another is just like the sense that when you're in prison, when you're incarcerated, and this won't be one particular inmate, But one of the things that's most important for them is that their lives aren't over once they're incarcerated. Like they still are having a human experience, and it can be a very growthful, powerful human experience.
Right.
And that they can still be at peace and even sometimes happy when they're incarcerated. And I think that's a key aspect to reducing recidivism and rehabilitation is just being okay no matter where you are. Because if you can be okay in prison, you have a better chance of being okay out in society where it's actually in some ways harder.
Yeah. And I would say, at peace, happy, and finding meaning again in their life.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think the journey of growth then becomes, and everything that they experienced prior becomes the, propellant for what's next and where they're going, which is
Exactly.
motivating. Yeah.
And I really try hard to create the work I do as non-denominational because while, I had my choice and process with Christianity, it's different for everybody. I
Sure.
work with Christians and Buddhists and Wiccans and just all sorts of different. And that's what I love about the Untethered Soul and the concepts that are in it is they apply to all levels of spirituality. Meditation has been, on the books for thousands and thousands of years as in all the different books is a way to get closer to God, whatever that, by whatever name you call God, that's how you get there. It's just, in the Christian world, I like to point out that the text, it says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Right. And that really paints a picture that I think is true. It points to your Buddha nature. It points to consciousness, your soul, but there's this experience inside, and some would call it the wisdom of the silence, right? When you go past the senses and you go past the layers of distraction and go past the flavors of whatever this life is that we're living in this day and age in this culture, go deep enough, and we're all at this source point where
Mhm.
the heart opens and we taste consciousness and we experience this oneness. Like that's really where I'm trying to go, and that seems to fly across all religious philosophies and dictums and ways of seeing the world.
No doubt. No doubt. You wrote a workbook based off the teachings of the Untethered Soul. Tell us
Yes.
more about that.
So after I left journalism, I worked for a company called National Center for Construction Education and Research here at Alachua, Florida, and it was a great job. We built curriculum for 70 different craft areas, carpentry, crane, just all across the board of what it takes to do building in the United States, do building well and safely. And what I learned was instructional design. So the Untethered Soul is a narrative. It's 19 chapters of narrative about an idea. And I went through the Untethered Soul and wrote a description of each of the chapters and then made learning objectives for each of the 19 chapters. And each of the parts, the sections of the book have a theme. And I built on that theme and then provided, learning exercises. So you can find that. You can download it. I have it available as a PDF, or you can get it as a full color printed book from Amazon. You can get it on my website, timodavis.com. And I also do courses based on that book. I've got an online course that I've been teaching for years now, and people really love it as a way to kind of go deeper with the Untethered Soul. And the way I like to do it is I assign reading, and then we build a cohort of 10 to 12 people. And that becomes your group for the 8 weeks that you go through the Untethered Soul. And we share. And so every once a week, we'll do a Zoom meeting where we talk about what was the point of this chapter and how are you experiencing the inner roommate and what is that the voice inside your head, what is it saying, and how are you experiencing your heart. And it's amazing, like as we were talking before, that sense of shared experience really drives growth. And
Mhm.
that's what we try to do with these teachings is to create like a sangha, a spiritual community that lasts often beyond the run of the course, so that people have a support network and they feel, like you said, that the look in people's eyes when they understand, and a sense of compassion when people get you, and somebody who checks on you and you're having a difficult day.
No, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. You had shared it with me on Friday, and I'm looking forward to diving in. As we begin to close this episode, if you can leave listeners with some insight, a practice, something to support their own transformational journey, what might that be?
Well, one of the things that's served me the best is in the early days of back in the mid early 90s when Mickey was building his business, he would talk about how some of the things he did to stay conscious or stay aware during the day. And this is prior to cell phones and prior to even like the internet mostly, right? He would talk about walking across the office, and he would, like, if he picked up his phone, he would just pause for a moment and just take a breath. Or he would talk about, like, before he went through a doorway, he would just kind of check in with himself. So I developed that into like a real process for myself. So I would meditate in the morning and meditate in the evening and set these kind of bookends of balancing my energy and my awareness, right? But then during the day, every hour before I would do anything, I would do a 3-breath meditation. And so it's like, say it's almost 11 o'clock, right? I would take a breath and just like feel my heart, and I'm talking about my spiritual heart, my energetic heart, this place inside where, we feel our experience of being human, and just check it. Like, what's it like? Is it hurt? Is it feeling broken? Is it feeling pain? And just take a breath in with awareness of the heart and release the breath with a sense of relax and release around that. And then I would take that same concept and put it on the mind. I would take a breath in, bringing prana, energy, shakti into my system and focusing it on the mind, the consciousness, the mind, the thinking part. Take a breath. Bring that energy, the prana, into that space, and then turning awareness to it, and not from the standpoint of trying to rip the thoughts apart or see what I was thinking about, but almost like the same way you look at your dashboard of your car, like your tachometer is spinning and your check engine light is on. This sense of how is your mind handling the events of the day, and relax, and then exhale that breath with a sense of relaxation. With a sense of releasing pent up, stored energy. And then I would take a last breath. And with that last breath, I would energize my whole being and just think, okay, what do I need to get done in the next hour? What's important? What's the priority? How can I make the most of this beautiful life that I've been given, this will that's a gift from God, and energy and memory and strength to make the most of this time that I've been given on earth? What do I need to do in the next hour? And I would release the breath with a sense of relaxation, and then just take that focus and go.
So powerful. I see it being, it's so simple and yet so powerful.
It really is a useful technique. I would especially use it before I had a difficult conversation or a meeting with somebody. And I was okay. I would even get down to think, what does a win look like for this meeting? Like what would an accomplishment be from this meeting that would make the time worthwhile?
Yeah.
And it's amazing, by getting centered first and then contemplating like your being, who you're representing, your company, your effort, your work, and then put your awareness in the other person. Like what's the experience they're having of meeting you? Like, what do you represent to them, and what's their goal? What's their mission? And by embodying both sides, even briefly, and feeling the energy that you feel from both those situations, I would find that I was more prepared to have a good meeting. I could listen better. I could be more aware of what they're saying, have more sensitivity to the expressions on their face. It was just a really great tool for conducting yourself as a human and as a business person.
Yeah, totally. Tim, such a pleasure connecting with you and
Same, Jonathan.
Listen to your wisdom and everything you got to share.
Same.
Is there anything you'd like to share before we close?
I think you got it. I'm looking forward to seeing you when I come down to Miami, and I'll be doing some talks in Miami. I haven't got my schedule sort of centered yet, but if anybody'd like to email tim@timodavis.com, I can provide some details, and I'll be working with the Evolve group down there on some projects. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you around art.
That'll be great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, You'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.